Two, three. Sound check. 1, 2, 3.
We're live. Good morning, and we welcome to the Planning Committee for February 3rd, 2026. All electronic devices, please switch them to non-audible function during the committee meetings. I'll check mine. I'm good. Just gonna do the roll call. I think we have quorum. So myself, I'm here, Councillor Nan, Councillor A. Wilson, Councillor Kassar, Councillor Kretsch, Councillor M. Wilson, Councillor Cooper. We are in the house here, and I have Councillor Francis. I have Councillor Francis, Councillor Pauls, Councillor McMeeking online. And that's it. So Clerk Kelsey, are there any addendum items to the agenda?
So all the additions have been noted on the published agenda and no further addendum items.
Thank you. Does the committee have any amendments to the agenda? Not seeing any. May I have a mover and a seconder that the agenda be approved as presented? Councillor Nan, Councillor Kretsch, thank you. Hand vote now. That's unanimous. Thank you. Members of committee, are there any declarations of interest? Not seeing any. Moving down to approval of minutes of previous meeting. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes of January 13th, 2026? Councillor Kassar is a mover and Councillor Kretsch is a seconder. Please indicate your hand vote now. Unanimous. The public has been advised of how to pre-register to be a delegate at the public meetings on today's agenda. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of council, City of Hamilton to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or the public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we're going to public hearings. 8.1. This is remnant commercial zones. Does the committee wish to see the staff presentation? I'm looking up and down. I'm not seeing any takers online. I'm seeing that the committee does not want to see the staff presentation. May I have a mover and seconder to waive the staff presentation? Councillor Kassar, Councillor A. Wilson, please indicate with your hand vote now. Okay, thank you. We do have registered delegations. That was unanimous, by the way. We do have registered delegations. James Webb, he's a planning consultant. He's in person here. James, will you approach the microphone? Our clerk will set you up.
I don't need it. And where we fail. We took this ahead. Pretty much time we're gonna go through.
James, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. James Webb speaking to you today on behalf of the Effort Trust Company. I'll preface my comments by saying I don't mean to be ungrateful for what's before you today, but we do have a minor request to seek a modification of the draft zoning bylaw that's before you today. Sorry, I've already forgotten my instructions on how to advance. The Effort Trust Company, over the past many years, has developed a major community node up at the intersection of Stone Church Road, the Red Hill Expressway, that encompasses essentially 4 major quadrants. The initial development was the Heritage Green to the north. We subsequently developed Heritage Landings to the south, which has a major supermarket, Heritage Commons to the left of the extension of the Red Hill Expressway, which is developing for a range of uses. And the property that we are about to advance through an application for site plan approval is Heritage Landings. Collectively, recognize that this represents some excessive 20 hectares of commercial and mixed-use lands that have been developed over the years as a comprehensive integrated community with close attention to architectural detailing, community infrastructure, integration of cycling, transit, and walkability. By way of background, the subject property, Heritage Landings, was the subject of one of many parcels that were approved by this council, or the prior council, excuse me, to be converted from an employment designation into a commercial designation. This is the staff report that came forward, and the site-specific policy that was adopted relative to this property recognized 1725 Stone Church Road, formerly employment, being recognized for its potential to be added to the commercial node, not necessarily required for your employment land area budget, and was recognized, and therefore, as the outcome of that process, the lands were redesignated from employment into a district commercial land use designation. Because of some of the site-specific concerns of the area, the amendment also included an area-specific designation, UHC 12, applying to the subject property that had 2 elements. And the one that I'll draw your attention to is Part B. It was acknowledged, because of the way the lands were developing as part of this Heritage Green community, that the city had an expectation as a component of a complete application for development. That's the emphasis, that we produce an integrated urban design study that shows how these lands would be integrated with the balance of the community. No issues with that. We fully agree, and Effort Trust has an interest in ensuring that these additional lands, in fact, are fully integrated for a range of purposes. The matter that's before you today is the rezoning. The city has taken the initiative to now align the zoning of the property with the designation that was granted a couple of years ago. The proposal is being rezoned to a C6 district commercial zone to align with the OP. But our issue is this: staff are proposing to include a holding provision on the land. And I think you've heard from the development industry on numerous occasions that we really don't align with staff in terms of the recommendations to include holding provisions on properties where it may not necessarily be required. The holding provision that's before you, this is contained in the draft bylaw, number 135, and it's with respect to item A, that the owner submits an architectural and urban design guideline document, including the overall community concept. I won't read it given my time limitations, but it's an expectation that a holding will be in place that requires us to make that submission. So I can update the committee that with the pending adoption of the rezoning, we are now ready to proceed with an application for site plan approval. The site has been designed. We actually can confirm that we do have some tenants that are signing agreements such that we can actually ensure that we will be developing these lands with tenants in place. And the consulting team, I had actually hoped that the application would have been submitted by today, but it's imminent, potentially going in this week, maybe beginning of next week, but it's going to be a fulsome application that will include the submission of an urban design guideline. In talking to staff in the lead up to today's meeting, they felt that the holding provision was necessary based on a degree of uncertainty with respect to their authority to impose the requirement to include an urban design document as a condition of site plan approval. We disagree with that. You have official plan policy that provides very clear direction, and what I had on the screen a minute ago said as part of a complete development application. Site plan approval is a development application, and we interpret that policy to say that it provides clear direction with respect to its requirement. As a condition of site plan approval, which we are recommending and in full agreement to, I just want to reassure committee and council that it has the exact same statutory authority that a holding provision would have. Both have the requirement that that approval needs to be in place prior to the issuance of a building permit. The way that the site plan approval would be structured, we would have a condition of site plan approval that would state no building permits may be issued on the land until that urban design document has been approved by city staff. It's the exact same authority, and in my submission, it is unnecessary duplication, it's unnecessary cost and potential unnecessary delay for us also to be subject to a holding provision. Mr. Chairman, those are my comments. I'd be pleased to answer any questions from the committee, but I do sit here before you today on behalf of the Effort Trust Company saying that without question, we're in full agreement that we will be submitting that document as part of a complete application for site plan approval. You don't need the added layer of duplication through a holding provision to require us to do that because we're in full agreement to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are my comments.
Thank you, James. Any questions from committee? Councillor Pauls.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Can you let me know what would the delay be and what would the cost be if we do not allow it and if we need you to do the holding provision? So what delay would happen and the cost, please?
I can speak from experience. We have seen numerous applications recently where we have conditions of an H that are also conditions of site plan approval. And I could point to a giant hole on James Street North, not far from here, where we did have a site plan approval condition that was an exact replica of a holding provision. The delays of the additional staff time, consulting time, it's not significant, but Councillor, I can say without hesitation that they're not all the same. Each and every development application has its own bumps and turns in its path towards an approval. And we are always very mindful of adding an additional layer that may in fact result in some delays. And the cost, I know that staff have been working, it was at one point in excess of $25,000 to lift an H. They are recategorizing the H's, but it's still a substantial amount of money and we can think of better ways to spend that money.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation. Obviously, you know, it's not good to duplicate what we have already. So thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. I don't see anybody else on, oh, Councillor Kretsch.
Thanks. I just wondered, I do think it's worth answering Councillor Paul's question. What are the costs and what are the delays? You're saying their delays are not significant and there are costs. What are they?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the cost would be the fee, which I'll have staff update me as recently as this year. I believe that they've updated the cost. It was $25,000 to file an application for holding provision. It's a zone change application is what it is. I know that the fees have come down, but there's still categories because there's a technical study involved. I'm not sure exactly how. The fees range from anywhere, I think from $9,000 up to $25,000. There are then my fees to prepare and process that. The time, there's staff time that's involved in processing an application. It gets assigned like any zone change application. The potential delays, you know, it could be weeks, it could be months. It varies on every application, Councillor. There, no two H's are the same. But in my experience, it just adds an additional layer to our process. We are streaming towards final clearances of site plan conditions, and we then have to pay attention as well to a zone change issue that is otherwise already being cleared. It has to go to council, the bylaws, in terms of an adoption, scheduling issues. It holds us up. I mean, land development projects are very time sensitive. Those types of delays, whether it be weeks or months, do impact a developer's ability to get a building permit in hand and proceed.
My understanding based on what you said was that the things you're preparing for the application, which aren't necessarily related to the holding provision, will happen anyways. Most of these things will happen anyways and the costs will be incurred. I was asking specifically, and maybe I just misunderstood you, about removing the holding provision and the costs associated with removing the holding provision itself. Because what you're saying, I think, you're going to submit these things anyways, there's a duplication, right? So I was trying to understand
Yeah.
what you were saying there, actually.
For clarity, it represents an additional cost over and above what I'm already doing as part of a site plan application. Because I'm making that submission, that will become a condition of approval because the owner will sign back the conditional approval letter saying we agree to the conditions. That process will fully allow for staff to review, comment on, request revisions, updates, and ultimately approve that urban design document as a layer to the site plan approval. By adding a holding provision, now I have to make a submission to a separate division of the planning department, development planning as opposed to site planning. I will complete an application form. I'll have it executed, commissioned, submitted with the fee, submitted with the same report. Now we require staff time to do that. It's in my view, it's an unnecessary duplication. As I said, and the key is, is the city prejudiced in any way? And the answer is no, because by making that a condition of site plan approval, as I said, under the statute, under the Planning Act, once that urban design brief becomes a condition of approval, I can't get a building permit. That's the exact same statutory framework for a holding provision. With an H in place, I can apply for a permit, but I can't obtain a permit.
Thanks. I think it's important that you provided the detail actually in that, so I will ask staff some questions when it comes up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other people wishing to ask questions. So thank you, James.
Do the general call out to the public. I'm not seeing her online.
Okay. At this time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And the final time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Okay, may I have a mover and seconder that the public submissions were received and considered by committee? Councillor Cooper, Councillor Nan, and that the public meeting be closed. So this is going to be an e-scribe vote. So should be coming up. The vote is up. Oh, it was up. It's up. That carries 10-0. And may I have a mover and seconder to approve the report recommendations? Councillor M. Wilson and Councillor Kretsch. Does anybody wish to speak? I'll take Councillor Kretsch.
Thanks very much. I have a couple questions and a comment. Could I ask staff to maybe unpack the last thing that the delegate was speaking to with reference to saying that there's an additional fee to submit the same documents to a different division inside of the Planning and Economic Development Department? That's a duplication that won't be necessarily giving the city any more information than they already have and doesn't prejudice the city as a holding provision. Like, can you unpack that for me? I think it's important for the committee to understand what the delegate has been saying.
Through the chair to the councillor, Anita Fayback, Acting Director of Planning and Chief Planner. So site plan applications and holding removal applications are processed by two different sections within the planning division. Different processes under the Planning Act. Holding removals are zoning bylaw amendments. They're considered zoning bylaw amendments under the Planning Act, but the authority to pass the bylaw is delegated to staff. So it doesn't come to council. There's no report to planning committee required. So the process is a little different, a little more streamlined from a regular zoning bylaw amendment that would come to planning committee. In terms of how we process applications or properties that have a holding provision and require a site plan. We do them concurrently. There's generally a condition included in the site plan application that requires that the holding be lifted. And so actually, I will note that staff are looking at bringing forward a report either to the next planning committee or in March that reviews that process and looks at streamlining and reducing fees in terms of being able to better scope the review. There may be, or there's the perception of duplication happening because there's two different applications that are going on at the same time. But the urban design review it would be looked at through the site plan process as well. The challenge that planning faces is that the Planning Act excludes urban design from site plan. So if an applicant is willing to undertake that review through site plan, we can certainly do that. But if they were to contest it, that may be a challenge at the tribunal. So I appreciate that this owner and this applicant is willing to work with staff. There are legislative challenges in terms of urban design and site plan. So in terms of including the holding provision, that would be why staff have recommended that the urban design brief be required. It's a significant site. Want to make sure that we're looking at it comprehensively from a design perspective.
Thanks. That does seem a little circular to me. And I understand, I think, what you're saying. When you're going to be doing this review of the process to try and make it more efficient, possibly reduce fees and try and find a way that can maybe, bridge a bit of a gap that may be there or address that, how will you be applying that though? So let's just say, for example, next month you come forward and say we have a new process. That process positively impacts the situation, right? Will you be applying that to the situation directly? Is this kind of a thing where it's like only for future applications? I've seen that before where it doesn't go backwards. So how will you do that? Because if there's something that comes about as a policy and we recognize as a city that we can improve it, I'm wondering how that will apply to people who are in that situation.
Through the chair to the councillor, we would have an effective date. So if it were to come forward, let's say this month, we would have an effective date following any kind of council endorsement, assuming that that's what would happen. And we would be able to apply it to applications that were forthcoming. So if they haven't made their application, that process would apply. We could even look at applying it retroactively. I think we'd have to look at each circumstance individually.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you so much. Brief comment from me. I think in this term of council, what we've tried to do as a group, collectively, all of us actually, is say, if there's a motion that needs to come forward, an amendment that needs to come forward, work with the councillor, get that amendment formally on the agenda to address the issue. And then it's really difficult in the context of coming forward at a meeting to be putting motions on the floor. I don't do it typically, ever, and most of us don't do it. And I think it's a really important practice. And I want to signal to that, like, it's a really important part of this process is if there's a motion, to get that motion on the agenda before the meeting. So if there is some interest from people to work on that or interest from the delegate to work on that, I encourage them to find the councillor that's relevant to the situation and get something on the agenda for council. Thank you.
Councillor A. Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director Feedback, just trying to ask, I think, a similar question to Councillor Kretsch a little differently, though. Prior to Bill 185, where the province changed changed design guidelines being part of site planning, would the delegates argument been more accurate that there's maybe no difference between the processes because we don't have the tension in the process through that negotiation because of Bill 185. So in one process, we have a negotiation going on and we can agree maybe we don't need the tension, but one of these is a negotiation with tension through the holding provision. And because of Bill 185, is your answer that the same tension can't be created via an urban design guideline as part of site plan, just because the province has said this mechanism is not equivalent to the other mechanism in terms of the tension piece?
Through the chair to the councillor, I'm hoping I understood your question. I think that the legislative changes have created a bit of a tension in terms of what we can and can't require. Generally, applicants and staff will work together, but if there is opposition to certain requirements of staff, we do have legislative restrictions, and they have, an applicant would have the ability to appeal a condition that they didn't agree with to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Thank you. So we have two processes in front of us, is my understanding, Chair, and I think this is a bit more commentary from me, that because of how the Bill 185 has changed the framework, there's different rights for appellants in these processes, and I think staff are presenting us an argument that mitigates risk. Is it always as open for business as pro that? Are we being as efficient as possible? Well, no, there's an element of mitigating risk, and unfortunately, provincial legislation has made that a harder balance, and I appreciate the forthcoming to report to see how we can be more efficient within the guidelines of ever-changing provincial legislation. I just wanted to get that understanding. It's not that we're saying site plans can't be binding. That was a very recent provincial change that came into place within, I think, last calendar year. Just confirming that that's a very recent change.
Through the chair to the council, I believe it was 2025.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing anybody else on the speakers list. Anybody online? Councillor McMeekin.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I appreciate the comments and the presentation. And in terms of the risk, I think we've been provided enough assurance to have an equal amount of trust that this company and this planner, who I think we've all had experiences with in the past, is pretty upfront. I don't want to do anything arbitrary that's going to, for a needless reason, add substantive cost to get in the way of this particular development. So I would like to see the alternative way forward by removing the holding provision. And I do so believing and trusting both the planner, who has been with us many times, and his background and his very logical explanation about why it shouldn't be inflicted on the builder, and the company as well, which has an excellent reputation in our city. And if it were to be deceiving us on this front, would be in some considerable political difficulty down the road. So I would move the alternate approach, or whatever the motion is. I appreciate Councillor Kretsch's indication about a motion. I ended up, for a series of reasons, just getting the planning agenda last night, so that certainly wasn't something I was able to do. But I'd like to see that holding provision removed for the very good reasons outlined by Planner Webb. Thanks, Chair. That's my submission.
So Councillor, is that an actual submission? And okay, one second. I'm asking Councillor Kretsch, do you wish to speak now, or okay? Thank you for that. So we're going to have some other councillors speak, and then we'll come back to you. Go ahead, Councillor Kretsch, or sorry, Councillor Wilson, you're first. Yes.
Thank you. Of course, it's the prerogative of any elected member on committee to move an alternative. I guess for me, in terms of good governance, I would like to clearly understand the wording, the intent, and the implications. It's been the practice, I think. It doesn't mean you have to practice it, but it has been the practice of planning committee, particularly when there are elements that could be tribunal sensitive and matters of litigation, that we work with staff to ensure that we have a motion and that it's circulated so that members have time to discuss in greater depth about consequences or unintended consequences, if any. And I would respectfully request that the previous speaker exercise that prerogative. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel comfortable at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Kretsch, were you still up? Oh.
Ditto.
Ditto. So what I'm hearing is that there is time to move a motion on this before it comes to council, and I would ask Councillor McMeekin that if he would like to move something, to bring it forward at council time, and we can deal with it at that point. more clearly. Does that make sense, Councillor McMeekin?
Yeah, if that's the best way forward, I'll certainly do that and appreciate the suggestion. I just want to be clear. I normally want to do whatever the normal process is, but when it's so clearly explained that it's a duplication and a cost to somebody who has an agency in town that has such a wonderful reputation, I'm anxious to be as supportive as I can. So I'll work with if Mr. Webb, just so I clearly understand, I'll make contact with Planner Webb and staff and work out a very brief clarifying motion for council. Sure.
Okay, thank you. And to remember to involve staff in that
Yes,
process
I
too.
mentioned staff, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that said, oh, sorry, Councillor Pauls, you're up.
Thank you, and I would love to second that. It's clearly, we heard this morning that it is a duplication, like Councilor McMeekin said. And at a time when we need housing, at a time when we need to build, at a time we do not need duplication where it stalls and costs more. So I will second that, if that's okay, Councilor McMeekin. You do it and I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. There is no motion on the floor at this time, but you're welcome to reach out to the councillor and speak with him privately. Just for the sake of the record, it does, if we were to move it now, there would be some challenges that staff is not comfortable with. So we want to make sure that everybody is feeling safe around the committee, that we're moving forward in a judicious manner that does not put the corporation at risk. So as I'm not seeing anybody else on the speakers list, please indicate your e-scribe vote now to accept the submissions and the report. Sorry, and the report recommendations.
Elsie Kelsey, I am back on the eScribe. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. As for Councilor McMeekin.
Councillor Meekin, do we have your vote? Okay, he's thumbs up. No? Councillor, can you give a thumbs up?
Can't see or hear him. Oh.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, that passes 11-0 with further discussions to come. Okay, we're at 8.2 PED 26036, application for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 2655 Fletcher Road in Glenbrook. That's Ward 11. Does the committee wish to see the staff presentation? Well, I will submit to the will of committee because I'm very well aware of this area. So may I have, okay, so James, you don't have to present. May I have a mover and seconder to receive and waive, or to receive and waive the staff to waive the staff presentation. Okay, that's unanimous. Oh, sorry. That was Councillor Cooper and Councillor M. Wilson. Okay, let's, and we do have some delegates, so.
He's the agent for the owner.
Oh, sorry. The agent for the owner, James Webb from Webb Planning Consultants, is in attendance today. Is James going to do a presentation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very brief. Mr. Chairman, members of committee, again, James Webb, planning consultant, speaking to you today on behalf of the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board. Just a bit of background on this application. Binbrook is within a very large catchment area that essentially captures all of the rural area to the south of the city, including Binbrook proper. They've been aware for a period of time that there is a significant need for additional school capacity. Presently, all of those students within that area are being bused to Bishop Ryan School, which is significantly over capacity. So the board made application to the province and the province agreed. They have now provided them the funding to build a new secondary school within that catchment area. The board then proceeded to undertake a site evaluation review, and they subsequently entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the Caterini/Empire Plan of Subdivision, have advanced on that property, confirmed that it meets their requirements with respect to its location, the capacity of the site, the size of the site, and have closed on that purchase. And we are now in a process of seeking the necessary municipal planning approvals in order to allow for the development of that school. Very tight and compact timeframe. The school is scheduled to be opened in September of 2027, which means that we'll be starting work. Ideally, grading will commence this summer, construction begins at the end of the summer, and a school opening for the September 2027 school year. Just a couple of quick slides in terms of its context. This is the location of the subject property, essentially in the northwest quadrant of the Binbrook settlement area. Has frontage on Binbrook Road to the south, Fletcher Road to the west, small amount of frontage on Pumpkin Pass to the north, and you'll see immediately across the street is the existing Our Lady of Hope Catholic Elementary School. So we already have a cluster of educational facilities in the area, and there'll be a certain interrelationship between the two facilities. To the right, you'll see a significant amount of green space. That is a natural heritage feature, a protected woodlot. Portion of that was acquired by the city as part of the original phase 1 development for the lands to the west, or to the east, excuse me. And that portion of the woodlot has been included in the purchase agreement between Caterini and the school board. And I can confirm to committee and council that woodlot is being transferred to the city of Hamilton to be retained in its natural state as a contribution and an expansion of a significant natural open space for the betterment of that community. As I said, the purchase and sale agreement allowed the school board to purchase what's outlined in orange and in green. We've purchased all of the phase 2 lands. They were initially proposed for a mix of single family and townhouse housing. You'll see the woodlot to the right, which was previously identified, its boundaries established, and we've respected those boundaries. There's no encroachments into that area. The city will acquire that piece and have frontage and the potential for access from Binbrook Road, as well as integration with the existing woodlot already owned by the city to the east. You'll see at the bottom of the plan, adjacent to Binbrook Road, there was a large block of land intended for stormwater management. That is essentially the lands that are subject to the zone change application that's before you today. Care of the province and keep talking about provincial bills, care of the province and the adoption of Bill 17. Permissions were achieved through that process wherein schools are permitted on any piece of urban residential land that has adequate services. So the majority of this site was previously set aside for residential purposes is permitted without any amendments to the official plan or the zoning bylaw to allow the school. The zone change before you today is just in regards to that southerly piece, which was zone P5. The amendments allow us to basically put some parking on that, a small portion of the multi-purpose athletic field, and a reconfigured and private stormwater management facility. And then you'll see to the extreme right, there's a channel with a blue strip through it. That's an additional block of land that will be transferred to the city of Hamilton, containing a natural channel design feature that will continue to convey water from the west outside the settlement area into the woodlot, as the woodlot is hydrogeologically sensitive and we need to maintain that base flow. We are before the city with an application for site plan approval. Conditional site plan approval is pending. We anticipate receiving that shortly and are very appreciative for the work that's being done by both the planning division and the site plan division to help the board advance this very much needed school to its planned opening date in September of 2027. Mr. Chairman, those are my comments. Obviously, I sit here today in full support of the application that's before you. It allows us to proceed. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions or comments for committee.
Okay, thank you, James. I'm not seeing any questions from the committee, so what I'll do is I'll pass the, okay, Councillor A. Wilson.
Apologies, Chair. Just one question from me. Understanding that you haven't agreed upon and staff are recommending approval today, is my understanding of the recommendations here, are you just able to talk about a little bit of the planning with respect to the stream? I'm seeing the kind of the parking right there, seeing green space on the other side. Like, how did you come to these decisions at the planning stage? And can you maybe just justify a little bit of the layout, why the green space, where the parking is, where the natural features are, where the school site is? I'm sure there were some limitations. Just walk us through how some of those pieces were decided.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll try my best and please ask any follow-up questions if this doesn't accurately respond to your question. So again, the lands were the subject of a draft plan of subdivision that was previously approved. Through that review process, all matters of groundwater, green space, protection of the woodlot were thoroughly vetted, became conditions of approval, and that subdivision agreement is still registered on the land. The process that we have followed is to essentially acknowledge that that subdivision agreement is in place and all of those fundamental issues that need to be addressed through the development of the school site are now being addressed either through the zone change in terms of the uses or through the site plan approval process in terms of the impacts and the implications for the manner in which we've designed the site. So the school proper sits on the lands that were previously set aside for residential uses. We've designed the parking to meet the city's requirements. We've designed planting strips. There's extensive areas around the periphery of the site wherever we abut existing residential. There are a combination of planting strips and robust landscaping to ensure appropriate screening and privacy for those uses. The channel that abuts along Binbrook Road was previously acknowledged through that draft plan of subdivision as a clear requirement of the city in terms of ensuring two issues. One, you have existing flows coming from outside the settlement area. They need to continue to cross the property and ultimately outlet as surface flow to maintain ecology issues with respect to the wetland. We've also got flooding issues as it relates to that same feature. So our engineers have had to effectively implement a water balance type approach to both stormwater management, groundwater infiltration, such that the health of the woodlot is retained, the threat and the potential for any flooding is fully addressed and implemented through the site plan approval process. So that's the manner in which the site has been designed. We've tried to separate the school with distance from the existing houses. We've tried to implement where we can appropriate green space and buffering and landscaping. We always have to deal with the zoning bylaw in terms of its requirements, and we believe that we've done so with respect to the number of parking spaces that are on the site. We've been working with the city's transportation division in terms of how we're designing access into the site. We have a total of 3, 1 from Pumpkin Pass, 2 from Fletcher Road, in order to separate bus traffic from drop-off traffic from staff parking. And it's a high school, so yeah, there's going to be the odd student or two that may have their own car. So the site has been comprehensively designed by the board to meet all of those objectives and demands. I mentioned Fletcher Road. Today, it's currently developed as a rural cross-section with an asphalt walkway. We're in agreement with the city of Hamilton that through the site plan approval process and external works agreement, we're doing 2 things. We're paying an urbanization cost for that road to be fully urbanized, curb, gutter, storm, street lights, and a proper sidewalk. And the school board, very unique circumstance for them, they will actually be acting as the developer to oversee the construction of Fletcher Road with requirements that it be completed prior to occupancy of the school. So very long-winded approach. Your question was broad. I trust that I've provided the overview in terms of how we've designed the site with our team of consultants and continue to work forward with development engineering staff, transportation staff, and all those groups to ensure that through the site plan process, all of those issues are properly implemented.
No, thank you. Through the chair, really appreciate that. Just one quick one from me. So I'm a student. I'm walking down Binbrook Road to get to school. I'm walking along the new sidewalk that I think is coming along Binbrook. I'm going to go along to the new one that's going to be on Fletcher. I'm walking parallel to that stream. My school's right there. There's some playground. do I just cut through the stream? Like, I guess that's my question is like, I know Rockton Elementary near where we are in the city, like there's that fenced off, it's the naturalized area. If the city's taking this over, if it's being naturalized, I'm just trying to understand, it's right adjacent to the roadway. Is that not exactly where everyone's kind of cutting through to get into school? Just trying to understand if that's been considered at all. I don't think by any means this is major. I'm just trying to understand the role of the water course in the operation of the school.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a very good question because there has been a significant amount of collaboration between the city and the board. The board has a responsibility to make sure that pedestrians, and ideally as many pedestrians as possible, have a safe and convenient direct access to the school. So the channel block is being transferred to the city of Hamilton through this process, and it will be fully fenced, chain link fenced. We have been looking at that very issue of how do we address pedestrian traffic, because given where the school sits in Binbrook, there's going to be a lot of traffic coming from the south and the east. So if you've been there recently, Binbrook Road is essentially complete in terms of its urbanization, and it includes multi-purpose paths, I believe, on the north side, and certainly a sidewalk on the south side. There's a roundabout that's being constructed at the intersection, and we've been working with staff to make sure that the design of that roundabout, so what we want to see is staff either using Binbrook Road, the north side, or if they're coming on the south side, they will go all the way to the roundabout where the design has made sure that there's a pedestrian crossing with pedestrian refuge in the center. There'll be a crossing guard such that we get that safe movement of traffic. So we did, initially there was contemplation of, could we just cut right through, but it didn't make sense. And the board would have a certain sensitivity about, there will be water in that creek. They always want to see sites that don't have any potential risk for students. So for that reason, they'll come across Binbrook. It's an extra couple of minutes for them. Wouldn't hurt to get a bit of exercise in the morning.
Thank you. That answers the question and addresses the concern. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else. I'd like to ask Councillor M. Wilson to take the chair. Will I ask some questions? Thank you. We did have a public meeting back before summer, and I'm wondering, I had some written concerns that I wanted to address. Did the original presentation and concept presented to the residents, did it change? Did the parking lot locations change significantly from that time?
To the chair, no, they really didn't. There was a very conceptual plan that was presented at that, and in hindsight, it didn't have all of the necessary details. There was also, though, when we sent out the invitation to that meeting, there was in fact a more detailed plan that was delivered to the community in advance of that meeting that did in fact show areas where we do in fact have parking in closer proximity. So there were two very different visuals in terms of what was being developed. One was an architect's, this is my picture and how I might use the land. The other was more functional in terms of ensuring that all of those issues were met, and that plan was available at the open house. The open house was very well attended. We heard certainly from residents that are immediately adjacent to the school. They're concerned about, potential issues of impact with respect to noise, light. So we're ensuring that through the site plan approval process, whether it be a landscaping plan, a lighting plan, or the site plan proper, that we're building into place the necessary buffers, screening, and landscaping to mitigate any of those potential issues.
Okay, thanks. So basically you're saying that if there's light pollution, loss of privacy, noise, fumes, things like that, they'll be mitigated through the site plan process, and is there any assurances that we can give, like say light pollution? How is that going to be mitigated?
Yeah, as a standard condition of site plan approval, pretty much every development that has any external lighting as opposed to wall pack, so any pole lighting, and certainly the playing field will have lights, we need to produce and submit to the satisfaction of the city staff a photometrics plan that will numerically identify any light trespass with very precise limits in terms of what's permitted. So we need to adhere to that. The board is cognizant of their location within an existing residential neighborhood, so we will certainly be designing the plan with that functional and technical requirement, as well as ensuring what we can do on site to mitigate any of those impacts. So it's both a technical requirement and then through discussions with staff to see how we can adjust the plan to mitigate any of those issues. And that all obviously needs to be completed before we obtain final site plan approval.
Okay, thanks for that. And then I guess just my final point is you mentioned Pumpkin Pass, but there are 4 or 5 houses on Kinsman Drive as well. And they had concerns about fencing and they did not see fencing. Is there going to be fencing between those houses as well as the ones on Pumpkin Pass?
Yes, to the chairman. So there's a variety of fence types that are required around the periphery of the property. So along the rear lot line of those existing residential properties, there will be privacy fencing. So that's a solid wood board fencing that would effectively prohibit any sort of light trespass onto those adjoining pieces. And that is being addressed through the site plan process. In other areas, as I said, we have chain link fencing separating the wood lot from the school, chain link fencing protecting the channel. Fulsome review will be conducted through the site plan process.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions. I'll take the chair back. Thank you. I'm just looking around for if there's any more questions. I see that Councillor Wang has joined us. Okay. Not seeing any. James, I heard that you were in support of the staff report. So may I have a mover and seconder to receive the delegation from the agents? That'll be from Councillor A. Wilson and Councillor Kassar. Please indicate your hand vote now. Okay, I see that's unanimous around the table. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And final time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? May I have a mover and a seconder that the public submissions were received and considered by committee and that the public meeting be closed? Councillor A. Wilson, Councillor M. Wilson. Please indicate your e-scribe vote now. And the vote is up. And that vote finishes 11-0, which is good because it's in Ward 11. Let's move on to item 9, items for consideration. Oh, sorry. Where did I miss? Oh, may I have a mover and seconder to approve the report recommendations? I guess that's on me. Councillor Nan, Councillor A. Wilson. And let's please indicate your e-scribe vote now. It's up. Councillor Pauls, can you give us a thumbs up? Or a down, yes. Freedom voice. Okay, thank you. Passes 11-0 again. Thank you. And now we can move on to items for consideration. 9.1, notice of objection to the notice of intention to designate 880 Center Road, Flamborough, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and this is in Ward 15. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report and receive the written submission? Okay, Councillor Cooper and Councillor, I see Councillor McMeekin leaning in. Thank you as a seconder. Okay, is there any discussion on item 9.1? And I see Councillor McMeekin waving. Councillor McMeekin, you have the floor.
Much, Chair. This isn't the first time that we have been asked to look at heritage designation for this property or parts of the property. The owners made I thought, a very thoughtful presentation not that long ago, which remarkably, given some of the challenges with heritage properties, was enthusiastically embracing the designation for the housing units there, but not for the barn. And she has written, Maggie Z has written a note to us, which is very thoughtfully presented, where she outlines once again her concerns. I have not spoken with the owner, but I do know the property, and the specific barn that's referenced has had so many alterations, fundamental basic alterations to it, that I seriously question, as does the owner of the property, the merit of designating the barn as part of the overall heritage approach. I'm delighted to see that the owners have embraced the basic recommendation around the household, but not the barn. Staff have indeed provided council with an alternative designation bylaw, and I'd like to put that up as an amendment to the recommendation. And I believe Councillor Cooper has agreed to second that motion. The staff presented alternative.
Okay, thank you. Is that happening at this moment right now then? Councillor McMeekin, I guess it is.
That's up to you, Chair. It would make sense to do so, I think.
Yeah, except we have the report recommendations are on the floor.
Yep.
So there'd either have to be a vote
I'll
or
hold it
withdraw.
until everybody's had a shot at the can, I guess. If that's the will of the committee.
Okay, so let me understand this. If this is on the floor to approve, do we have the amendment first or do we approve first?
So with, it's not really an amendment, it's the alternative. So
Yeah.
currently the report recommendations are on the floor, so they either have to be voted on or the mover would have to withdraw putting the recommendations on the floor. It's cleaner to proceed with a vote.
I was just trying to be friendly. I want to move ahead with the alternative. However we handle that procedurally, Chair, I'm in your very capable hands.
Through the chair, Alyssa Goldman, Culture Heritage Program Lead. So as the councillor mentioned, an alternative designation bylaw is included in the staff reports attached as Appendix C. If the desire of the committee was to move that instead of the staff recommended bylaw, you could amend recommendation 3 of the report to say, instead of Appendix B, Appendix C.
I hereby do so.
Councillor Cratch.
So are we on discussion about the alternative? I can discuss what's being proposed. Sorry, I can discuss what's being proposed. Okay, just making sure I was in the right part of the meeting. Yes, I'm just wondering if this is something that notice to the Heritage Committee would be useful to have, if there's time, if this is time sensitive. I know that's why we have a Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee, and I'll say as the council representative on that committee. Is it useful sending this over there to get comments from them? I'll ask staff also. I'm not sure what the process is usually like. I'm just being mindful of the fact that this is happening right here in this moment. And what staff are saying from Heritage is they don't recommend going with this approach because it would potentially mean demolishing an historic structure. So just mindful of that and really wanting to introduce that. So I'm going to ask staff, like, what could a process look like in terms of getting feedback from the Heritage Committee that could come here? Is this urgent, et cetera?
Through the chair, so under the Ontario Heritage Act, there is a legislative timeline for council to make decision on a notice of objection of a designation recommendation. So for this particular property, we would need a council decision by March 4th. So the timeline is rather tight. We did try to get to the earliest planning committee we could with this. So I'm just thinking in terms of timing. There is the February meeting of Heritage Committee. It wouldn't be able to go back to Planning Committee before then going to Council. So I don't believe that provides sufficient time to get advice from Heritage Committee on that.
Okay, thanks.
I will just maybe add one more note in terms of the concern about the removal of the barn. Although it isn't staff's recommendation that it be removed from the designation bylaw, under the Ontario Heritage Act, any building or structure on a Part 4 designated property, if it's proposed to be demolished, requires a heritage permit that requires council decision. So even though the barn would not be a heritage attribute, they wouldn't be able to obtain city grant and loan money, for example, to do restoration to the barn. There would still be a process for considering its demolition at a future date if it was still designated with just the house itself as a heritage attribute in the bylaw.
Thanks. And so would that come to the Heritage Committee if that secondary process?
Through the chair, yes. So for that type of heritage permit application, it does require a council decision, but we would follow our standard heritage permit process. It would go to our subcommittee, a staff report would be written to our main heritage committee, and then a decision of council on the final permit.
Okay, thanks. I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say right now. I'm going to ask Councillor Cooper and Councillor McMeekin if we wanted to vote on the alternative, that you remove your motion from the floor to vote on the alternative, like, because you've put it already out there.
Yeah, I'll remove the motion. I thought it was procedurally correct, Chair, but this isn't the first time we've spoken to this and heard the logical arguments made by the owner. So
Okay.
I'll withdraw it in favor of the moving the alternate approach,
thank you.
the alternate recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And with that removal, I see that Councillor Kassar would like to speak.
Well, there's nothing on the floor right now.
The original recommendations in the report are what's on the floor right now, which was moved by Councillor Cooper.
So you're open.
Okay, so yeah, I just had a question to follow up around the barn to what Councillor Crutch was asking. As Councillor McMeekin noted, a very thoughtful letter from the owner. And in that letter, I'll just read a little bit from it, that the barn has undergone extensive structural intervention, including full replacement of its original stone foundation with modern concrete and reconstruction of major building components for safety reasons. I'd just like for you, Chair, to just get staff's commentary on that, because I think what the owner is putting forward here is that kind of the heritage value has already been lost, for lack of a better word, because of that work, and just how that factors into the staff position, please.
Right.
Through the chair. So in terms of staff's ability to review the extent of what exists in the barn, we had previous real estate listing photos, as well as discussions that we've had with the owners getting to this point and getting to the original recommendation to designate. We haven't been granted access to the property, so we don't have our own site visit photos. I will say that the most recent letter from the owner does describe much more extensive renovations than had previously been disclosed to staff. They'd indicated they had done some repairs previously, and so we were still supportive of maintaining the barn in the bylaw. I will say, though, that in terms of the structure itself, the timber frame construction in the interior is a large component of what's significant about the barn. From what I understand, that has not been impacted. So there might be some concern about some of the features that are listed in the current staff recommended bylaw, but we would still indicate that the barn itself has heritage value. So hopefully that sort of addresses that concern.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else on the speakers list. So at this point, I think what we're going to do is we're going to follow Councillor McMeekin's wishes, and he wishes to move the alternative designation bylaw, where council may pass a designation bylaw that only includes the historic brick house in the list of heritage attributes as requested by the owners. Is that correct? Okay, so Councillor McMeekin, are you going to forward that?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Give me 1 second. Can I just confirm, Melissa, through you, Chair? So we wouldn't have to amend B, number 2, about the council not withdrawing? Just to change number 3?
Correct.
We just have to
Recommendations-
change to Appendix C.
Correct. Recommendations 1 and 2 would still be required.
Okay.
And recommendation 3, in order to approve the alternative that's presented in the staff report, 3 would just need to be amended to say Appendix C instead of Appendix B.
Okay, and that's literally the only wording change? Okay. Okay, so now I need to know if it's the intent to just amend the report recommendations to change it to C as discussed by Alyssa.
That's you, Councilor McMeekin. You're muted, sir. You're still muted, sir.
Sorry, Chair, this coming in virtually is much rather be there face to face, but the owner has recognized thoughtfully and appropriately the historical significance of the house, and have, for good reasons, articulated in the reading by Councillor Kazar as to why the barn should not be included. This is, I think, at least the second, perhaps even the third time we've heard that argument. It's being delivered appropriately in the correspondence. Staff have at least acknowledged that it's a thoughtful proposal by opening up the alternative designation. So A and B, I take it from the comments is we'll take care of the brick farmhouse. The embracing of Appendix C would handle the barn issue, which is the only thing the owner's identifying as wanting to see change from the Heritage Committee's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. That was a yes then, Councilor McMeekin?
Yes, Appendix
Thank you.
C. Yep.
And 1 second, I'm going to go to the original mover. Would you cede the floor to?
That's just trying to move things along.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Councilor Cooper, seconds.
Yes.
Okay, so
we're now going to do the vote on the amendment, which is just changing subsection C, that the draft law bylaw is now going to be Appendix C that's being approved.
thank you. So we're going to vote on that now.
Great.
Please indicate your e-scribe vote. Okay, that passes 10-0. Thank you. Moving on to,
Motion as amended.
so
Thank you.
that's the motion as amended is approved.
No, now we need to do a vote.
Okay, thank you. That's not on my blue list. Thank you. So may I have a mover and seconder to approve the motion as amended? Councilor Cooper, Councilor McMeekin. Please indicate your e-scribe now. Councilor McMeekin is thumbs up. Councilor Pauls was indicating thumbs up. And that carries 11-0. Moving to 9.2, HMHC 2601, Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee minutes dated January 16th, 2026. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes and approve the recommendations therein? Councillor Kretsch and Councillor A. Wilson. Is there any discussions on item 9.2? None? Thank you. Please indicate your e-scribe vote now. That passes 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to motions. This is a motion from myself, so I guess I'm going to pass the chair over to M. Wilson to address rural storage needs through the self-storage facilities review.
Please speak to your motion and introduce it, Councillor.
Thank you. This is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ted McMeekin, and it's addressing rural storage needs through the self-storage facilities review. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Basically, it's there online for people to read it, but this motion says, that there are, I guess what we're saying is to staff, let's see if there are other zoned lands in the rural areas that could be considered potentially for self-storage facilities without compromising farmland, wetlands, tree canopy, and watershed. So basically what I'm asking for is, therefore, be it resolved that the staff be directed to enforce illegal storage operations, including commercial truck parking in rural areas, to protect farmland, wetlands, tree canopy, watersheds, and wildlife habitat. B, that staff be directed to request, through future provincial policy reviews, including the Greenbelt and Niagara Escarpment Plan reviews, anticipated to begin in 2026, for greater flexibility to address rural storage needs while maintaining strong protections for agricultural and natural heritage systems, and that this be informed by the engagement for and rural area recommendations of the Self-Storage Facilities Review, CI 24E, and other work undertaken by the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area municipalities, and C, that staff be directed to prepare key messages and supporting materials on this initiative for use by council members in future delegations to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So that's Roma and AMO. And if you have any questions, have at her.
Councillor Casara, on the motion, questions, please?
Yeah, just a comment.
Comment?
Through you, Vice Chair, just wanted to acknowledge Councillor Taddison for his work on this. I've sort of been adjacent to the process and involved a little bit throughout the process. It's been a bit of a road to get here, a lot of good work. So I think it was a good example of a collaboration, certainly with rural councillors. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions or speakers to the motion? Councillor Cretch, please.
My only question is just about the wording in the first part. So, and just about the implications of B and C. So I'm supportive of this in general, just making sure. There was a motion that came forward at some time in the last year that came from a standing committee. And then someone later on said, well, that ought to have come to council with respect to an implication with Roma or AMO or those kinds of things. Because usually motions about asking the province to do something, motions asking AMO or somebody else to do something come to council as some kind of advocacy piece. So I'm just mentioning that. And staff have already looked at this and it's fine. That's okay. I'm just flagging it. That staff be directed to enforce. So my question is, are staff already directed to enforce these things? And if so, like what's the activity there in A actually? Should it just be a whereas clause, or is there something new that's happening? So I want to ask staff that question in terms of, is there something new happening or not something new happening?
Director Smith, please.
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, Dan Smith, Director of Licensing Bylaw Services. We are enforcing currently those provisions of the zoning bylaw. If any changes to zoning we would continue to enforce. If there are any major changes that resulted in service level expectation changes, we would bring that forward as an update.
But if I understand through the chair correctly, you wouldn't be doing that because you're not changing what you're doing. So you're already enforcing illegal storage operations, including commercial truck parking in rural areas. This isn't going to add additional resources to that, is it?
Through the chair, no, it's not anticipated to do that. And I guess for clarity, we're already enforcing these bylaws.
Okay, so maybe we could throw the word continue in there. I just don't want this to seem to be like something is happening here that it's not happening. So if it's that staff be directed to continue to enforce it, I guess that makes sense. But I'm just not understanding the actual utility of A.
I'll ask the mover if he considers that a friendly.
That's a friendly.
Thanks.
Any,
Just put the staff can
the first.
To be directed to
Therefore.
continue
to enforce.
Thank you very much. Any further speakers to the motion? Seeing none, it's been duly moved and seconded. We have an electronic vote, please. Thank you. That carries
Thank you.
11-0.
Thank you. I'll take the
Over
chair
to
back.
the mover.
Lori.
I'm glad to hear we'll have another item for Roma next year,
Thank you.
if we're
Excellent.
there.
Okay, private and confidential closed sessions. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the January 13th, 2026 closed session minutes as presented and that they remain confidential? Mover and seconder, Councillor Nan and Councillor Kassar. And please indicate your described vote now. And that passes 11-0. Does the committee wish to go into closed session for items 12.2? I'm seeing from the ward councillor, no. So that means we go to page 15. Reading it like my friend would read that. Page 15. So may I have a mover and seconder to approve that directions provided in, okay, that closed session recommendations of confidential report LS 26001 remain confidential until made public as the city's position before the Ontario Land Tribunal, and that balance of the report LS 26001 remain confidential. Please indicate your, okay, we do need a mover. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Kassar and Councillor A. Wilson. And please indicate your e-scribe vote now.
Can you ask for Councillor Francis and me?
Councillor Francis, Councillor Meekin, can we have some visual? Okay, Councillor Meekin.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And that passes 10-0. The guess was 11:15. It's 10:47. Kudos to the chair and committee. There being no further business, we adjourned at 10:47 a.m.
Thank you, Chair.